Do you want your business to grow faster? Are you open to new and out-of-the-box ways to drive revenues and increase value? How do you imagine the most successful entrepreneurs and business leaders double, triple, or expand their businesses tenfold or more? This is a weekly podcast featuring conversations with business owners, executives, and leaders as we reveal behind-the-scenes details that give you, our listeners, the confidence to pursue your own deal-driven growth. On the show, we discuss a huge variety of deals, everything from large, complex mergers and acquisitions, capital raising, joint ventures, strategic alliances, real estate, affiliate and sponsorship deals, and more, including smaller deals that you can do without significant capital. My name is Kupfer, and I've been supporting deal-driven growth for businesses for over 35 years as a successful entrepreneur, professional negotiator, and attorney. My goal is to help you strategize, plan for, find, and complete deals that will help your company grow faster. Welcome to the DealQuest Podcast. Let's get started. Steven Montgomery is the founder and CEO of Resibrands, a leading portfolio company for the fastest growing home service franchises in the nation. Having recently shared ownership of Resibrands with Cody Sanchez, Steven is excited to share the story of how he built his brand. Resibrands includes successful brands such as That One Painter, Garage Up, Pink's Window Service, and Monty's Handyman Services. Under Steven's leadership, these brands have revolutionized the industry, bringing dignity back to blue-collar workers and setting a new standard of quality and excellence. Steven's mission is to help aspiring entrepreneurs take their first steps from 0 to 1, turning onepreneurs into entrepreneurs, leveraging proven model and a supportive Resibrands team. His story is one full of the power of determination, innovation, and a relentless drive to elevate the standards of an entire industry. Welcome to the podcast, Steven.
Hey, thank you. I'm excited.
So listen, there's so much we could talk about. Obviously, it's a great entrepreneurial story. We're going to talk about, franchising, which is a deal. Obviously, you have a deal with Cody Sanchez, which is huge. We want to talk about that. But before we get to any of that stuff, I want to ask you a question looking back. When you were 8, 10, 12 years old, what did you want to be? Because I'm sure a franchisor and, of multiple franchises, it was probably not it back then, but you tell me.
Yeah. 8, I think I wanted to be a bus driver. Driving a big old bus, not like a school bus, but like a big city bus. I thought that would be really cool. I don't know. By the time I was like 10 or 12, I really wanted to be Air Force pilot. That's what I kind of dreamt about at that age. And then when I got into high school, I really wanted to be in advertising. That was kind of what I thought I would get into, which maybe loosely now, we do run a lot of ads for our franchisees. And so I get to be a little bit involved in marketing and all of that too. But yeah.
Got it. So, your bio says you went from a college, dropout. So I definitely want to hear about that journey. But before we go there, one more question looking back. What was your first deal of any type? Could have been something small when you were a kid, or maybe it was your first franchise. I don't know. You tell me. First deal you can remember.
First deal I can remember. I don't know about deal. I mean, I always did a lot of extra work around the house. My dad would pay me for that. So I always grew up my whole life wanting to work and wanting to make money. But then we were living in Australia. My parents were missionaries. So when I was a kid, we lived all over the world, but we were living in Australia for a little while, and my, parents were encouraging me to maybe get a job, do something, to turn some extra money if I wanted to do that. And so through the church, I think it was, they ran paper routes. And so they hired me to run a paper route, and it was just junk mail. So I'd wrap up junk mail and all Friday night, and then all day Saturday, deliver it to different houses. And he gave me a route. I did it every Saturday. I'd make enough money that I could go to the movies or buy myself, skateboard or whatever. And I loved it. It was my favorite thing. I was 12 at that time, I think. It was my favorite thing was the fact that I had a job and I made my own money.
I love it. So does that tie in any way on the college dropout thing? I mean, sometimes people drop out because it's a great opportunity. Sometimes they drop out because they hate it. Sometimes they go to school in the first place because even though they want to be an entrepreneur because their parents, for me, I know it wasn't even on the there was no menu other than go to college in my family. I didn't even know there was an option.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that journey, because obviously you've become so successful.
Yeah. So we were missionary. So I was homeschooled some. I went to different schools in other countries as well. So kind of hybrid. And then we got back to the US when I was 14 years old. It's funny, it was the same year that Mean Girls, that movie came out, and she was like coming back from Africa, and it was like her first experience was high school. That was my experience. I had literally just gotten back from Africa, and that movie was like the most popular movie that year. It was like, and kind of that experience of like, so I didn't have a lot of friends, very few friends my freshman year of high school. I had like straight A's, sophomore year, A's and B's. And then I started making a lot of friends, and I just stopped caring about school. Like I just didn't care. And I don't know, by the time I was 16 or so, I just smelt bullcrap on the whole thing. Like I was like, this doesn't make sense. I don't think college is for me. So my parents were like, well, you should consider something. And it was like for a while with my mom, I remember it was like something we would fight about my grades in my junior year because I was getting like all C's. And we would fight about it like all the time. And finally, like it was towards the end of my junior year, I think, of high school. We were in the driveway at our house. We had like just pulled back up to our house, and we had been arguing the whole drive from school on the way to home about grades. And we're sitting in the driveway before we go inside, and my mom, just something clicked for her, and she said, you know what? I don't care about your grades anymore. I'm not going to ask about them. I'm asking you to not drop out of high school. Other than that, finish high school, pass high school. I don't care. I just want you to make sure that you do something that you're proud of with your life.
Wow.
And she said, I'm not going to fight you anymore on this. This is the last fight we're ever going to have. She's like, I don't even care what your grades are. Just do good enough to graduate. Wow. Something clicked for her that she was like, it's not a battle I'm willing to have, because she noticed that like I was going to win it. Like I didn't care. I smelled bullcrap on the whole thing. I didn't want to do college. So senior year, I got really involved with our church. And so I ended up going to a Bible college because I didn't even take my SATs because I refused to. Literally the day of the SATs, I like protested and didn't go. Wow. I was like, I don't need that. That's not what's going to make me successful. I'm not playing by their rules. So I was a little bit of a rebel, like in that way.
Yeah.
But I was really interested in like theology and in maybe getting into ministry or something. So I went to a Bible college for like a year and a half and met my wife there. So she was there and we started dating. But I was like, I can't do college. So I dropped out of that. And my parents were like, well, maybe you can pick up some stuff at ACC, a local community college here. So I signed up for a couple classes just to make them happy. And then I went and I called them. I was like, I'm not going to do this either. I can't. I'm going to work and save up my money and do something else. And so my parents said, that's fine. Just like we said, you graduated high school. Thank you for doing that. We never said we were going to force college on you, but if you're not going to do any college and you're officially dropping out, they asked me to read 2 books. And so the first book that they asked me to read was 4 Hour Workweek. Uh-huh. And because my mom was a realtor at that time, and she loved that book. And then my dad gave me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I never finished reading. But 4 Hour Work Week, I was obsessed with it, and I was already very competitive. And so the idea of doing something faster and more efficient so that you can get your time back was. And then for me, it wasn't like I didn't want to get my time back so I could do nothing. It was like I want to see how efficient I can be with a task or project or company, so that I can do more things, right? And so that kind of started, the mental process of me looking at everything and saying, how quickly can I systematize this, delegate this, and get it off my hands so I can do other things and more things. And I've been obsessed with that ever since. And I think it's a lot of how I've been able to grow is I look at something and I just start asking myself each time I do something, when is the last time I can do this? Like, because I've either systematized it, automated it, or delegated it to an employee so I don't have to do it again. Yes. And I literally, everything I do, I just ask myself that over and over again. And I think that came from that book, 4 Hour Work Week, where there's just this obsession with that. But yeah, I don't know. That was kind of a long-winded answer to how I got here. But I dropped out of college, got married pretty quickly after that. Right after we were married, we got back from our honeymoon. I was doing some subcontracting for another painting company. They had me pressure washing all these houses, and I was making terrible money for them. And I just couldn't do it. I was like sitting in my truck like a week or 2 after our honeymoon, finished pressure washing 3 houses, and he would pay me $50 a house. I made $150 for the day. And I'm sitting there sitting in my old 1994 blue, Ford F-150, soaking wet, smelling like bleach. And I just call my wife and I'm like, hey, what you make at Starbucks, I'm pretty sure that will cover rent. And if tips are good, it'll maybe cover groceries. And at that time, like, we were so frugal, like we had our groceries down to like $50 a month.
Wow.
And no, nobody, like, even my parents were like, that's not possible. I'm like, I can show you, like, that is what we spend on groceries. And it was that first, couple months of marriage, but she was on board. She was like, yeah, quit, do your own thing. I thought I had a job lined up because I was still doing side work on the weekends for clients that I knew and would paint their house. So I thought I had one of those lined up for $2,700. And so that was going to be like my seed money, was getting that deposit from that guy. That would be how I start my business. So I quit doing the subcontracting for the other guy, pressure washing, thought I had that job. Literally the day after I quit, that guy canceled that job. And so I, promised my wife, I was like, I'll knock on doors, I'll call realtors, I'll do whatever I have to do to be successful. And it kind of just snowballed from there. Eventually, pretty quickly from there, I was hiring friends, teaching them how to paint, and just growing.
Yeah. So, there's so much in that. For me, the whole conversation of systemizing, delegating, I talk often about highest and best use, that, I only want to do stuff in my highest and best use areas, and there are only a handful of those. And, I spend a very limited amount of time. And so, that resonates. Just the faith that you had, whether that, I know you come from a missionary background, I don't want to presume, but, whether you call it the universe of faith in God or just in yourself or whatever, that's such an entrepreneurial trait where, like, there's no objective evidence of any reason why, right? If somebody looked at your background, right? College dropout, rebel, somebody doesn't want to, right, work with somebody, whatever, they might think there's no evidence of, why you should be successful, although those of us who know the entrepreneurial world actually know that that's those are a lot of the characteristics of very
that's some of the good ingredients.
But in the traditional model of schooling and creating what some people might say school system for 100 years is created employees to be cogs in the corporate machine. Just based upon what you said. So but the point is, like, there's a lot that is such a classic entrepreneurial, journey, right? And you just had this determination, right? You were going to make it work somehow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. My faith in God is a big part of it. But I'll tell you, like, I've been in the middle of nowhere Africa, where we didn't know how we were going to get back to the city. Like, you know what I mean? Literally in dangerous, kind of sketchy situations. And running a business will test your faith more than that. Yeah. Running a business, you have employees who rely on you, and and revenue is down that month or whatever. You're like, and you will have sleepless nights. You will have sometimes entire months that are just pure hell. And I'm very grateful that my parents raised me the way that they did, and my faith in God has gotten me through so much. But God also, He expects us to work. We're we were created to work, and so it's not pray and just hope. It's pray and then put your head down and work your butt off. Yeah.
One of the ways I've heard it expressed is this grace and self effort, right?
That's exactly right.
Not one or the other. It's both. Grace and self effort.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would be remiss not to point out, because I feel blessed that I have the same thing, is you also had a wife who was willing to, believe in you and stand behind you and say, go for it, which not everybody has, a partner like that.
Yeah. No, my wife has been an amazing support to me and for me. She's awesome. And, business is not something she cares about much. And she is not involved in the business at all. She's at home raising our kids. We got 4 kids, and she's taking care of the house and taking care of the kids. And that, we're very traditional in that way, but that's what we both wanted.
Yeah.
So
that's great. All right. So let's talk about, so in the beginning, obviously a lot of hustle, right? You said you built it up, you hired people, whatever. It's sounding like in the beginning it was, hard work, hustle. Obviously you must be good at selling because you're able to get customers. At what point did you, there are many businesses, I talk about this all the time in this podcast, that just continue to grow organically, and that's all they ever do. And they never look at inorganic or deal-driven ways to grow, whether it's franchising, whether it's business partnerships, whether it's acquisitions, whether it's raising capital, any of those kind of things. You obviously at some point started, looking into the franchise model. What had you do that? Because, the first question is like, some people don't even, like they can be phenomenal entrepreneurs. And I talk about that there's a mindset difference between employees and entrepreneurs, clearly, right?
Yes.
But there's also a mindset difference between entrepreneurs and deal makers. Yes. So at what point, how long did you just grow it organically? At what point did you start doing deals, franchising or otherwise, in your business?
So I started painting houses, started hiring friends, started teaching them how to paint, grew to a few crews, and then grew to, being one of the bigger painting companies in Texas. That was a 10-year journey. 10 years of building one step on top, one block on top of the other, yes. one foot in front of the other. And then after a decade, because one of the things that I don't love is that Resi looks like a overnight success just because of the massive growth. And I just try to remember every moment, like, it was 10 years before I started franchising though. 10 years of just me building a single business in one city for 10 straight years. Then I franchised.
It's interesting because that is there's a classic line that every overnight success had a 10-year journey.
Oh yeah.
You had exactly that.
Yeah, it was it was 2011 to 2021. And then 2021, we started franchising and it did grow fast. And then, franchising is a form of deals. It's partnerships. They're franchise partners. It's their business using our brand in a licensing franchise agreement, basically. And then what became, we started a second brand with Garage Up, and that was really part of how I brought on, he's my cousin and he's also worked for me in That One Painter. And so we ended up partnering in That One Painter and Garage Up. And then that kind of became our business of Resi right after that. But the next phase there was I got introduced to the founders of Pinks through a mutual friend. And they were like, you have to meet these guys. They are doing a window cleaning business, very, very like-minded. Think about home services and business the same way that you do. You got to meet them. And I was told already, they want to franchise. They already have kind of tried to franchise and decided they didn't want to do it on their own. And so it was just like this natural partnership. And so we brought Pinks under the Resi umbrella, and that brand has just taken off. I think we've sold like nearly 140 franchise units in 13 or 14 months.
Wow. All right. So hang on. I want to go back before we get to the next slide. So you're 10 years in to this business, right? You built it up, you focused on scaling, you focused on systemizing it, you focused on, getting the model down, right? I'm assuming. What had you decide or even be aware of or decide to, go into or start looking to go into
franchising? Yeah. So you're asking why franchising, right?
Yeah. Why franchise? Yeah. Why did you, you're a decade in, what had you say, oh, now it's time, or this is the direction we're going in? Yeah,
it was probably like year 8 or 9. I started working with a business coach. Yep. And because I was feeling stuck, like I had gotten to a certain size, I had grown to quite a few crews. I had project managers now, but I didn't know what was next. And so, or how to go past that. I kind of felt like I was at the ceiling. I didn't know where to go from there. So I hired a business coach, started working with him. He got me kind of dreaming a little bit bigger again. We built out this business plan to go to 5 cities. And I was going to hire project managers or general managers that I would offer maybe a little bit of equity. And that was the whole plan. And so I mapped that entire thing out. I even had started saving for it. I started writing SOPs and manuals. And then another friend of mine gave me the book, The E-Myth. And he loved that book, but he just read it from, for the basics of writing manuals and systematizing your business. And so he handed it to me. But by the end of that book, I was convinced that franchising is the way to go. And so I talked to my business coach. I was like, hey, I love this business plan, but I want to do it with franchising instead. And he's like, well, that's where I can't help you anymore. I don't know anything about franchising, but I'll find you somebody who does. And so he introduced me to this guy named Gary. That's a really good friend now and a mentor. And Gary, has helped 30, 40 people franchise their business. And he worked with us for about 9 months, and we developed our franchise system and then launched it in 2021.
Wow.
And the reason that I loved it was a way for me to, expand the brand, build our business through empowering other people to become business owners and entrepreneurs. And that seemed like I would have way more fun doing it than just building corporate locations that I owned.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, when I've spoken to other franchisors, especially at the level you've gotten to, I mean, tell me if this resonates as an accurate statement for you or not, but, based upon what I've had conversations with others, like you're no longer in the painting business or the window business or whatever meaning in your, you're in the franchisor business, which is a different business.
Yep.
Your franchisees are in the painting business.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a big shift. So now we're in the business development, coaching, system processes and systematizing things, negotiating vendor deals. Like that's our business now as a franchisor, not so much so the painting aspect of it or the window cleaning aspect of it.
And was there anything that was difficult for you about that shift? I mean, in some ways, it seems like it really resonates with, back from the 4-hour work week and everything you believed in. So, but were there anything that was challenging about that?
I remember we were only like 6 months into franchising, and I called my business partner, Alan, one day, and I said, I feel like I was born for this. And it was all of the right mixture of business that I loved. So like we were still in the trades, like we're still home services and blue collar, but at the same time we were getting to do marketing and negotiations for vendors and stuff. And so it scratched other itches for me that like I really loved. And then, I love researching competitors, and you get into franchising, you got a lot of big competitors. And so I would just read their FDDs and franchise agreements over and over and over again. I would like study their websites and I would, pretend to be a candidate and like learn everything I could about their brands. And like, it was just really, really fun and met a lot of my natural instincts or talents or whatever pretty well. I would say that the thing that I don't think any franchisor is ready for unless they had previous experience is just there's this weird battle of like, all right, so it's like our brand and we're trying to push that forward, and it's still their business in their city. And so there's just always a little bit of tension there, and the good franchisors balance it really well. And we try our very best to do that well. So you can't be too heavy-handed and like force them to do stuff. And you also can't be too lax where they can just do anything they want and end up ruining the brand or veering too far off from it. So finding the right balance is very difficult. And I don't know that I've perfectly found it. Trial and error, you learn a lot and you get better at it. That's the piece that I think everybody struggles with as they get into franchising. And then there's like relational elements, like those first 20 franchisees are almost like your buds. You know what I mean? You're going to be really close. And then you get bigger than that. It changes drastically where you don't know everyone. Now we have multiple brands. So there's people coming into the brands I've never even met because somebody else approved them. It gets to there's a lot of learning curves that I've had to go through in this last 3 years.
Yeah. Let's take a break from the show for a minute so I can tell you about an incredible resource my team and I have put together for you. Secrets of Deal-Driven Growth, Creative Ways to Grow Your Business, Even in Challenging Times, is a powerful ebook that helps you take DealQuest podcast episodes and apply them to your own life and business. This is the ideal tool for anyone looking for creative ways to grow as deal makers, and you can get yours now. It's as easy as heading to corykupfer.com/workbook and downloading your copy. While you're there, you can also consider joining our dynamic deal-driven community of founders, experts, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. Now back to the show. And in terms of, obviously not only have you had your own journey, and which has overall been very successful, but the way you studied other franchise systems, right? As part of what you did. What are some of the things that you figured out that make successful franchisors as opposed to the unsuccessful ones? Because you hear ones that fail, and you hear ones where the franchisees are dissatisfied, and obviously the ones that take off. And it's interesting because most people generally who are not in the franchise world, they're much more familiar. I mean, we've had a couple of folks on recently, over the last number of months, that have been focused in non-food franchises, but, like food and retail, like those are much more known. But, the franchise model has really been, there's so many non-food franchises and they're very different. But in any case, yeah, what are some of the things you figured out like that great franchisors do, or what are some of the mistakes they make?
It's another balance thing. So we set out to offer as much as we possibly could to support our franchisees. But if you do that too much, you can make it seem like they're just going to press the easy button and I do everything for them.
Yeah.
I build their business for them. And you have to be really careful there. So you want to do as much as you possibly can. The way I pitch it now is, look, I want to make, like, you are going to build a house. That's your job as the business owner. You're going to go out there and build this business. So think of it like building a house. We've got the blueprints for you. And we're going to hand you a tool belt full of tools. Yep. We're going to tell you where to source the lumber and the siding and all the electrical and all the other things you need. You'll have somebody to call anytime you're not sure what to do. And very often, we're going to come by and say, hey, we have a new type of hammer. We want you to try this one instead. Okay? At no point is my team going to build the house for you, though.
Right.
And I think that's how we pitch it and talk through it. But like sometimes you can maybe overemphasize how much we're going to do to support you, and then you end up with some franchisees who are maybe too reliant. Conversely, like you also have franchisors who it's like, here's a printed manual and you get the rights to use our logo. Please send your royalty check every month.
Right.
And they're doing almost nothing for the franchisee or supporting them in any way. That's also not great. And so finding that balance between, I'll tell you what the balance is. At no point are we ever responsible to build their business, but at every point are we responsible to make sure they have the best tools, resources, supplies, vendors, whatever. That's our role, is to get the best we can into their hands, so that they can be the most effective as possible building the brand and utilizing the system. I think that's the right way to think about it. I'll say, like, a mistake I made very, very early on. We had a franchisee who, at that time we did only one territory. So in the very beginning, we only sold one territory to one person who had to run it themselves. Yes. And one of our first ones, he was supposed to quit his job and run this business full time, and instead hired his brother. And then we found out, well, one, you didn't quit your job like you told us you were going to. Two, you hired it wasn't even his brother. It was like somehow he was related to him. And that guy's not even full-time either. He's part-time, we find out. And here's where I went. So that guy's like, he didn't meet his side, right? Like what he was supposed to do. However, I'm a brand new franchisor. So I thought, well, I'm supposed to slap him with a legal compliance letter. That's what we do, right? So I slapped him with a letter. He immediately just calls me and quits, right? And says, I'm out.
Right.
And looking back at it, I'm like, that was such a stupid thing to do. And it's like, she's not the CEO anymore, but for a while she was, I don't remember what her name is, but she was the CEO of Neighborly. And she was at a conference and she said, a phone call is always the best first step. And that's Neighborly, a multi-billion-dollar company with 30 brands. And I think that in franchising people, it's this giant long FDD and franchise agreement and all that. And at the end of the day, that thing is still a very, very, very last resort, and relationships and phone calls is always the right method. I learned that the hard way very early on. And now, it's like, I think the worst franchisors do nothing for their franchisees and slap them with legal threats if they don't comply. That's the very worst type. Again, you can't just let your franchisees ruin the brand either. You can't sell omelets at McDonald's for a reason. Right. You know what I mean? Right. So
yeah, it's interesting because something I say to my clients all the time is that, listen, the purpose of whether we're talking about any kind of legal contract agreement, right, strategic alliance, joint venture, franchise, whatever it is, the franchise disclosure statement obviously is the FDD is like, has all this. It's a required legal, right? Yeah. But that's like, successful business relationships do not work or not work based upon legal documents. The legal documents serve two purposes. One is they hopefully give you a roadmap if things go bad, so that it's not a mess, that there is a way that things, how you get rid of a franchise, or for this business partnership, how you split up, and so it's a roadmap on how to do it, and it's clear on who the rights and preferences are. But hopefully what legal agreements do up front is that they help make sure that everybody has an understanding of what the business deal is. But then, I've always said, and I've been around long enough where I used to say, put it in the file cabinet as opposed to digitally. Hopefully you file that agreement after it's signed and you never have to look at it again. You have to look at it. There's a problem, right?
Yep.
And great business relationships, whether it's a business partnership, a strategic alliance, franchisor, franchisee, a built upon relationship. Obviously, there's got to be limits and guidelines and rules, and you may have to check people, but that's a great lesson to learn. What about on the franchisee side? I'm sure you have gotten, like any other franchisor, have gotten better, created better systems, and just gotten better at figuring out who the right franchisees are and who's going to be more successful and the criteria for them. Talk to a little bit about that journey and what maybe you learned along the way on what makes a great franchisee, and maybe that you didn't know as much earlier on.
A grit and leadership is what's going to make any business owner, whether they're a franchisee or otherwise, successful. They have to be able to build a team, lead a team, encourage a team, cast vision for a team, and take a team somewhere, right, towards success. They have to have grit because you're going to have bad days, weeks, months, and sometimes you might even have a whole bad year. You got to have grit to get through that. You have to have the proper mindset to keep pushing through and not, you might want to quit, but you don't talk about it. You keep grinding, you keep working because people are counting on you and you committed to something, so build. That being said, I can't define what makes a great franchisee for other brands beyond that. But I can tell you what makes a great franchisee for our brands and what we look for. We are looking for competitive people who like to build sales teams. Like, this is a sales and marketing machine inside of the home service and trades world. That's what we are. And we have phenomenal operations and systems. But at the end of the day, like painting, for example, it's eat what you kill. You got to sell every day.
Yeah.
And we need franchisees who have a bit of a competitive mindset, who enjoy that. And so what I tell people now at the end of every one of my executive calls, so we'll have a group of potential franchise candidates for that one painter. I still do those ones. And I tell them at the end of the call, I want you to Google painter in my city. So whatever your city you're in, Google it. Find the painting company in your city who has the most Google reviews. Take a screenshot of it. I want you to stare at that for a while. And I want you to start envisioning yourself beating them, having more reviews than them, having a bigger company than them, having a bigger team than them, taking over this market. If you don't become convinced in your mind that you can do it with that one painter, if you're not convinced that it's something you would really enjoy and want to do, don't schedule the next call. You're not a good fit for us. If you were looking to build an average size company, or you're looking for something really easy and hopefully it gets to a decent size and I can just have this passive income, you're not the right fit. Don't schedule the next call. We are looking for people who want to build something significant and prominent in the home service realm or trade in their city. Like those who want to build something big. That's who we're looking for. It's not easy. It takes building a great team. We have the systems in place to help them do that. But I'm looking for those competitive people who, I'm that way. Like I study my competitors. I look at them. I put my competitors and their numbers up on whiteboards around me, and I stare at it and I figure out how can I beat them. And that's our culture here. And we need franchisees who align with that.
Love it. So you talked a little bit about some of the, folks you went into business partnership with early on, and I want to start there and then obviously get over to Cody. But so obviously, to whatever extent you're comfortable disclosing any details and not asking for anything confidential, but just the decision, right, to partner with anybody in a business is a big decision. You mentioned one person. I think you said was a relative or a friend.
Yeah, my cousin.
Yeah. And then you mentioned, on that other franchise. So, is there anything, talk a little bit about those decisions to partner with people and to whatever extent you can share sort of, what those deals look like.
Yeah. So, built for a decade on my own towards, I was probably almost like 8 or 9. I hired my cousin to come be a project manager for me. And he had a really positive impact on the business. I really brought in a lot of new painters, even trained up some new project managers. When I started building out all the manuals and started the franchising process, he kept the original location growing and doing really well. And so I brought him in on as a partner in what we were doing. And yeah, I've never regretted that decision. It's made me a lot better. I think having business partners, if it's a good relationship with the person, like it makes you better and you can go way farther together. And then, then once we had, two brands and started to really grow That One Painter wildly, that's when we also brought in the founders of Pinks as partners for a franchising endeavor together. And so, yeah.
And you guys, so they're partners in the Pinks portion only? Is that the way you've set it up? Or, and again,
yeah, we're partners on Pinks. Yep.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, that obviously makes sense because that was their baby. You bring, I mean, in any kind of business partnership, whether it's a true partnership and co-ownership, whether it's a strategic alliance, joint venture, any kind of, the question is, what does everybody bring into the table? Is there a fair split, of economics based upon the value everybody's bringing? And then hopefully, right, that 1 + 1 can equal at least 3, if not 10, right?
Right, exactly, yeah.
So it sounds like, you alluded with the Pinks folks that they had thought about franchising. They even looked at it their own. So, was it basically that from your point of view, they had a real strong, solid business that was franchisable from their point of view? They didn't have the expertise or know how to do that in the way that you did. And that, combination created some fuel on that fire?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They had their business, their brand was phenomenal. Like their numbers were great. Their systems were great. Their marketing was great. Like they had everything that you would want in a brand that you would want to franchise. So it was, obviously we had some experience in what some of these things should look like at the franchise level. Yes. That we helped them, and we helped them build out their training further and helped them think through what it would take in different markets and whatnot. So obviously there was a lot we offered there. Obviously the distribution we already knew how to sell franchises. We already knew how to support them. And even in that deal, there was multiple times where I told them, I'm like, you guys need to understand, you have a very franchisable brand and you should do this even if it's not with Resi.
Yeah.
I told them that multiple times. I said, if you choose to do this without Resi, I'll be disappointed, but I'll still cheer you on because this is a great branding. You need to do it.
Yes.
And ultimately for them, it was a very open-handed deal for us of like, look, like this is what we could do together. You could do it on your own. I never once wanted to make them feel like they couldn't do it without us because I genuinely believe they could have. But at the same time, it would be a lot easier with us. Right. and a lot more fun. And I think they had verbally very often had said, it's not something we wanted to take on our own.
Yeah.
So it was a perfect fit and has gone really, really well. They're great business partners. There's, every partnership you'll have maybe moments where you disagree, but we have been able to talk through every single thing very easily. And so I know that business partnerships can be a little bit nerve-wracking sometimes when you're trying to figure out whether or not you should partner with someone or whatever, but ultimately you're defining whether or not you trust the people. And if you trust the people and you like the people, it becomes a lot easier to do business together. But if you don't trust them or like them, don't ever do business with them.
Yeah, totally. No question. So yeah, listen, it sounds like that's worked out great. All right, so now we talked about those business partnerships. We talked about franchises. How does Cody Sanchez come into the picture? And I assume the far majority of my listeners know who Cody is, but just in case there are a few who don't, talk to us a little bit about Cody and how that came together and what it's meant for the business.
Yeah, so we had 3 brands. Resi was starting to become something and was growing rapidly. Cody heard a little bit about our story, and so she reached out to me on LinkedIn, and they did like a newsletter, one of her newsletters about myself and kind of That One Painter and Resi and kind of what we had built, and that did well. So she reached out to do a video with us. We did a video that day. She focused on Resi and mostly Pinks, and when she was interviewing me a little bit about Resi, and it's funny enough, like some of these conversations, like they weren't even put into her video, but we were on camera, like being filmed, and she's interviewing about Resi and our story and stuff. And I just was casting vision for where I thought this would go and what we were capable of. And then, one of the things that I talked a bit about is, her training and everything is phenomenal for buying current boring businesses. It's fantastic. However, we've had a lot of people who went through that process and their deal fell apart. And so they gave up and bought a franchise. And I was kind of sharing that with her. I'm like, look, like buying an existing business is awesome, but it's also can be painful for some people. And some people would be better off in a franchise. Yeah. Some people are not right for a franchise and should go buy the business, but they're both valid options and they serve different purposes. And that really resonated with her. And so she wrapped up filming with the Pinks guys, texted me, was like, hey, I had a great time. Love them. Love you guys. It's fantastic. And she's like, I'd love to talk about partnership. And so we just started talking about it. And I never reached out to her about the deal or about her covering our brands. It was, I say this all the time, like too many people get focused on trying to get attention onto their thing. And it's like, just make your thing awesome. Like just work on building whatever it is, your business, your craft, work on it, build it. Then attention comes once it's good. Yeah. Right. And so for us, that was Cody Sanchez, you know what I mean? And for others, just work on your craft. And when you build something special, when you build something that you're really proud of, there's a good chance that other people will start seeing in it what you see in it. Yeah. Don't worry too much about that. Just focus on building, and then the rest will work its way out, right? Like it will come around. So yeah, it'll work itself out.
You know, I really believe in that. You know, it's much more of an attraction model than a sort of, go out. It doesn't mean you're not working, of course, et cetera, but it's not, you're not desperately trying to get people's attention, like you're trusting that if you build a great brand and you take care of people and you do well, that it's going to, that people will at some point see it.
It's building versus striving, right? And so a lot of people are striving, and that means you're putting a lot of effort in on the wrong things. And if you just build, you won't have to strive.
Yeah, I love that. But I mean, to do that, especially because there's so much out there that actually encourages people to strive and to hustle and not hustle like just work hard, but like you gotta, and what you're talking about, which is something I believe in as well, takes more patience, although you could actually grow more quickly, but just like energetically, it feels like it takes more patience because you're not
100%.
Right?
Yes.
And it takes more trust.
Yes.
And, I would guess, I don't want to presume, but I would guess, the faith background you have helps with that. Most people I know who are faith-based, and that doesn't have to be, for some people that's traditional religions, for some people it's, spirituality, some people it's, the philosophies, whatever it is, but they trust in something that is not, that if they take that next right action, right, that it will all work out, and they're not in that. I love that distinction. They're not in that striving mode. And so, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but I think, patience and trust and faith make a big difference in being able to do that model.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's, I don't remember where I've heard it put this way, but it's long-term patience and daily urgency.
Yeah.
So you're getting as much as you possibly can get done in a day with as much urgency to execute the tasks that need to be done today, while simultaneously understanding that the whole thing's a process and you just have to be patient. Yeah. It's not patience or urgency, it's both. You have to have both.
Yeah.
And I think like I'm the most patient person. You know what I mean? Like that's how it feels. Like I am so impatient, yet and I come across as impatient to people, but it's like I have a lot of daily urgency. So I'm like, hey, I need you to do it today. I need it done. Can you just get it done? And they see that as impatience, and I think it's urgency. But I'm like, sometimes I just have to remind people, I'm like, I've been doing one straight thing for 13 years now, building a painting company that's now, multiple home services, but it's been one journey for 13 straight years. I'm very patient.
I love that distinction between the daily urgency and the, and the longer term patience.
Yeah.
That's great. All right. Before I ask you my final two questions, because we are coming on time and, we could talk for hours, but what's the vision for the future? I mean, is it obviously expanding the existing, brands you have? Are you looking at creating or acquiring or partnering, on other brands? What's the bigger vision here? The next level of the vision going forward?
The vision is the greatest trades franchise that's ever existed. That is a very long-term vision. I don't have a specific number of brands or franchisees anymore. I used to throw specific numbers out. I don't. Greatness is what we're trying to build. And that takes time. And so right now, 2025, our goal, we have 3 brands. We have 2 that are about to launch. One that just launched yesterday, actually, Action Exteriors, which is roofing and siding and windows. And then we have a handyman brand that'll launch sometime next year. Our priority for 2025 is those 5 brands and making those franchisees as successful as we possibly can. So giving them every tool and resource that we possibly can to help them be successful. From there, we'll add more brands as we feel is appropriate timing. And we will continue to grow these brands. And it's not like there's these 5 I wanted to get these next 2 live. But from there, I'm not in a rush to add more brands. We'll keep adding as we feel good about it. But there's so much potential just those 5 that, we want to be smart about how we grow. And I say this all the time, just that one painter, just that first brand has the potential to do $1 billion in revenue on its own. Wow. And CertaPro, our biggest competitors, I don't think they do $1 billion yet, but they're high 100 millions. And we're gaining a lot of ground on them. So there's so much to do just with the 3 brands that are already launched plus the 2 that are coming. And I want to make sure that our franchisees feel wildly supported. And not that I don't ever want them to feel like I'm building their business for them. They need to feel that themselves. But I want them to feel like I gave them my very best at the tools, resources, and systems that they needed.
Love it. All right. So if people want to find out more about the franchise opportunities, everything you have going on, where should they go?
Yeah, go to resibrands.com. You can kind of read about all of our brands on there. Fill out the form. If you fill out that form, it'll get you on a call with one of our team members who can kind of walk you through the different brands, what's available in your area, and really good people. There's a good chance you'll get to meet my mom or my dad because they are on my franchise development team. So they're screening people and bringing them through the pipeline. I've got both of my parents working for me. So
I love it.
If you want to, meet those great people who raised me, get on a call and learn about one of our brands.
Oh, that's so awesome. Steven, my final question on the podcast is always about my highest value in life, which is freedom. And for me, that means everything from freedom around the world, from oppression for all people, to why I've been an entrepreneur for decades and haven't had a boss. What does freedom mean to you, and how does it impact your life and business?
Freedom to me is the opportunity to focus on the things that you feel like you're meant to do. And I think that a lot of people get stuck somewhere, whether that's college or a career that they don't love and don't feel like they were meant to do, but feel like they have to for some reason. And freedom is the ability to say, I have the time and resources to do what I feel like I'm meant to do. And that can look very, very different for all of us. But for me, entrepreneurship has allowed me to focus on the things like I feel like I was meant to do.
Love that answer. Steven Montgomery, thanks for being such a great guest on the DealQuest Podcast.
Hey, thank you. This is really fun.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of DealQuest, where we help you understand how deal-driven growth can be your ticket to freedom. I want to invite you to a unique way to tap into the wisdom and experience of the DealQuest community. The Deal Den is a place where entrepreneurs, high-level executives, and business leaders come together, support each other's growth and success, and share what's working best, as well as what challenges we are facing right now. You will get input not only from me, but from all of our members. We collaborate and serve each other. To join us, go to coreycupfer.com/dealden. I'll see you there. I'm Corey Kupfer. Until next week, wishing you the freedom and financial prosperity that I know your DealQuest will bring.